Full time in Warsaw, Legia Warsaw 0, Chelsea 3. I'm Daniel Charles. This is my review of tonight's first leg in the Europa Conference League first leg. A very dull first half that felt very similar to so many games we've watched in recent times under Enzo Maresca, but a much improved and significantly more positive, more vibrant, and in the end effective second half where Chelsea have given themselves a lot of room for error next Thursday. And we saw some individual moments of brilliance and inspiration that, I think for individuals is obviously going to be really positive. And just for the team, listen, I think that given what's happened earlier this week with the Champions League and where Chelsea want to be in the future, there's no way this win and kind of what Chelsea could do in this competition, even getting as far as the final and winning it is going to replicate what we've done in other European tournaments. But, I think Chelsea need to respond. I think they need to pick up wins. And like I said, post-Spurs, my hope is this win can move on to Sunday and keep that momentum going. And I hope some of the individuals who did impress tonight can gain more minutes before the end of the season, because I hopefully will improve the performances, the general level of performance that many of us have felt needed to improve and raise the ceiling basically for some months now. The starting lineup was a little bit more rotated than I anticipated. I said in my preview that what I kind of wanted Maresca to do was to start strong and then you have the freedom to rotate. In some ways he did that, in other ways he didn't. So Jorgensen started, Josh Achimpong, who we're going to speak about in this review, really happy to see him start. We saw Tosin start. I expected him to start. Badiashile, I didn't expect him to start this game. Malo Gusto instead playing left back rather than Marco Correa. Reece James moving into central midfield alongside Keenan Dewsbury. Also both Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez getting a full rest this evening. They haven't had many of those in recent times. Jadon Sancho still starting a game, but that turned out to be a positive in the end for Chelsea. Cole Palmer starting, Tyrique George on the left, and Christopher Nkunku up top. There's no two ways about it. The first half was bland. It was dull. It was really frustrating. It was very, very similar to so many first halves we've seen. I was given a stat during the first half, or at least just straight into half time when Chelsea hadn't scored again. The last first half goal Chelsea scored was at the end of February. I think it was the 25th against Southampton. That does need to change. Obviously, in this game, Chelsea got away with it with a much improved second half, but just so timid, just so tame, so lethargic. And when you see the difference that Chelsea had post half time and, some of the changes and tweaks that Maresca clearly made that did make a difference, you kind of just sit there and go, why do we have to waste so much time? Is it to maybe be a little bit silly about it? Is it, very much luring the opposition into a full sense of security and then pouncing on them for post half time? I'm not entirely sure, but it was really turgid first half. It was a classic case of Chelsea and Maresca for the second game in a row not having in any way a focal point, with Nkunku again failing to impress. And Chelsea against a deep, low block that we expected in Warsaw, not providing anything in terms of an output for them. But defensively, they were going to try and limit space. And I was really frustrated that in the first half especially, Sancho wasn't taking on his man. He wasn't being dynamic with the ball. Very safe, repetitive, slow possession football that so many have come to really dislike about Chelsea this season. But it is 0-0, it is half-time. There were changes to be made and I was happy that we saw some of them. Palmer came off. I was a little bit surprised by that, but maybe that was a predicted thing. That was something that was planned ahead of time. And Noni Madueke came on for the second half, which obviously created a little bit of disruption and kind of change in the way players were going to be set up for the second half. That did work for Chelsea. And Levi Colwill also coming on for Tosin Adarabioyo, which is a little bit of a surprise. I wonder if Tosin's being prepared for Sunday's game against Ipswich, or he's got some sort of fitness or injury thing. I don't know. I found that sub a little bit weird, to be honest, because defensively, Chelsea weren't really troubled at all until very late on in this game when Legia were really trying to get something out of this home leg. But in the second half, the big change that was made was you had Josh Achimpong moving into central midfield. a much more central area. Then you had Christopher Nkunku just playing more of a retracted role rather than as kind of the centre forward, which is probably not his preferred position, where he wasn't having an impact, wasn't holding up the ball. Tyrique George, where we have seen this before, playing in that central role, arguably false nine, but definitely is the most central of those forward players. And Noni moving to the right, Sancho back to the left, and Chelsea quickly up the intensity, quickly started moving the ball quicker, were so much more intent in terms of pressing Warsaw into errors. Kind of just, again, we've seen this with Chelsea before, especially in the Copenhagen game and recent games as well, where it's just, again, weird that it seems like we waste 45 minutes when, why can't we do this from the off is kind of my question. But really good. I'm so happy. One of the most wholesome moments of this season is Tyrique George finally scoring his first Chelsea goal. That broke the deadlock just after half-time. Reece James firing a shot, palmed away by the keeper, and there was Tyrique George. Really good anticipation, keeping himself onside. A classic striker finish, really. And for him, George has been trying and desperate to score his first Chelsea goal pretty much from the start of this season, and at times has been trying maybe a little bit too hard to get his first Chelsea goal. But it was so huge in the context of this game, because you did feel like, given the lack of impetus and kind of attacking intent by Warsaw, they were hoping keep this 0-0 as long as possible, maybe get something on the break. The moment we score that first goal, as we know, this is their home tie. They've got the hostile home crowd. They need to get something out of it. So obviously that opened up. It forced them to start committing men forward, and because of their lack of quality, more gaps opened up for Chelsea. But I just thought, again, it's those intangible things that make such a huge difference. And I'm not saying that positionally Maresca did nothing in this game. He obviously did shift some players around, but just in terms of the general tempo and tone and feel of the team was so much different. And either the players are not going out there and being as intense as Maresca wants, or Maresca is just becoming more of a better sort of half-time motivator. I don't know what it is, because really, again, you look at those levels, but I think part of it was just individuals and personalities on that pitch being a lot better. Noni Madueke for the second goal in particular. Brilliant finish. I've got to give credit to Jadon Sancho. It was Chelsea really hounding, pressing Warsaw back, and eventually a loose pass from the keeper, just trying to hoof it up the pitch, intercepted by Reece James, passes it to Jadon Sancho. Sancho then, I thought he was going to take a shot, but instead he lays it into the box for Noni Madueke, who takes the touch early and then rifles the shot beyond the keeper. Really good finish by Noni. That was his 9th goal of the season. And, I'm someone who's passionately kind of defensive of Noni Madueke. I think in terms of wide players this year, he has been the best. And I think, again, we saw here today in terms of actual output, in terms of finishing chances, Madueke is probably the strongest in that aspect. And given this as a guy who's missed a few months for injury, I'm sure that was a big moment for him. And for Sancho too, directly contributing to a goal, which people, have very much dismissed and kind of rightly criticised about his lack of end product, and doing a lot of dribbling but not actually having that kind of focal point or kind of really decisive pass or decisive shot that's going to make a difference in the final third. 2-0, brilliant. I think the thing from this point for me was that I want to see Chelsea go and try and get that third, because we were in this position almost a month ago, maybe just over a month ago with the Copenhagen first leg. We were 2-0 up, and people wanted to see us press for a third after a very dull first half. Instead, we didn't. We sat back, and Copenhagen got that late consolation that then made the second leg a little bit more tense. If you could get the third here, it obviously leaves you so much room for error, and at this time of the season would give Maresca so much more license to rotate. Nkunku nearly was the one who got it. Nkunku wins the penalty. I have to say, I was a little bit surprised. The challenge on Dewsbury Hall, it was quite confusing. The ref took a little bit of time to make his mind up, and VAR took its time to look at the several challenges. Eventually, Chelsea do get the penalty, but the challenge and foul really on Dewsbury Hall, I thought could have been more than that and actually got a red card, but no, in the end, no red card, but Chelsea do get the penalty. Nkunku, who I think at this point has been flawless, up to this moment had been flawless from the penalty spot, especially in the Conference League so far this year. And it is like the Palmer penalty a few weeks ago. You see players when they lack confidence. Nkunku a few months ago is probably rifling that home, but at the moment a player is either, we've talked about, I think at times you can argue about a lack of application, or just a player who at times in his demeanour looks a little bit disinterested. I think we saw that in the first half. In the second half, his run contributes to this penalty, but the penalty just simply wasn't good enough. And you think, is that a really bad moment in terms of not like costing Chelsea the whole tie, but in terms of it will give Warsaw the impetus to maybe go and push for a late goal here and change the dynamic as we move into the second leg. But literally, what was it, 45, 50, 60 seconds later, Chelsea had the ball in the back of the net. And once again, really good, intricate, fast play and movement down the left. Jadon Sancho with a really good ball across the box. And there was Noni Madueke again, great anticipation to tap it in for 3-0 and killer goal, kills the crowd. Chelsea feel brilliant. There were a few moments late on when they were definitely pushing for a consolation. Jorgensen, just before the end, had to make a good stop, and there were a few corners to defend. But really, in the end, it was a very simple night for Chelsea in what could have been an awkward one. I know Maresca was really bigging up the crowd and the hostile crowd and what it was going to be like, and Chelsea fans away from home. Obviously, there were a lot of warnings about potential hooligan behaviour and not many Chelsea fans out there. Credit to those who did make the trip over, and obviously I think it will be a limited away allocation for Warsaw next week at the Bridge. But in the end, I think Chelsea handled the situation well. I think I've got to give credit to Maresca and the players for stepping up that performance level just after half-time, because at half-time, I didn't think Chelsea were going to lose the game, but I was very concerned it was going to either Chelsea were only going to win the game about 1-0, but it may have gone to a 0-0. But the increased tempo, brilliant for George. I thought I got to mention him before we wrap up here. Josh Achimpong, I thought was brilliant today. I thought in the first half as a right back really helped contribute to Chelsea not being done on transition. He's got such a great physical build about him. He looks like a player a lot more mature and older than he actually is. So physically he can handle himself in these kind of occasions. But just there's a composure about Josh Achimpong that makes him seem like a player you want to give more time and trust to. And then later in the game, there are a few bursts forwards in the first half where you thought maybe as a right back he could do a few overlaps. In the second half he played central, and again, very impressive, very cool, very composed. And again, I don't know why we wouldn't want to be using him more before the end of the season, because there was such a big song and dance about keeping him at the club pre-Christmas. Why not integrate him more, either as a right back, either as a central midfield option if you can, because central midfield, as we know, has been a problem area in terms of depth this season. I truly don't understand why you wouldn't want to use him. And as well, we know he can play centre-back too. So like a lot of Cobham grads, right, it's kind of classic Cobham. We saw it tonight with Reece playing central midfield. We saw Josh playing several positions. We saw Tyrique George playing several positions. We know of Cobham, they can be versatile, they can be dependable, and they can do good jobs for the team. And really, I think the star tonight, although I know Madueke scored 2 important goals, but for Tyrique George, a massive moment in his senior career, his first Chelsea goal, hopefully the first of many more, and maybe because he was taken off at like the 75th minute, maybe a sign he may even start on Sunday. I would love to see Tyrique George given a Premier League start against Ipswich, because listen, I think a lot of those players, maybe tonight was a reaction from Jadon Sancho because he knows he's under a bit of pressure, but he has started about 6 games in a row for Enzo Maresca. But credit to Sancho, he did contribute massively in that second half as well. So good position for Chelsea to be in. We move on now to Sunday's game against Ipswich. Huge game. Again, Chelsea have to win it in the context of Champions League qualification, but in the context of the Conference League, gives us a massive breathing room for next week's second leg. Please let me know your man of the match, your thoughts on the game in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.